my talk for today, being, we're closing in on Thanksgiving, is a little bit different take on it. It's called Give Credit to Yourself. But first, a joke. Elderly Jewish grandmothers driving 70 miles an hour in a 40-mile limit and gets pulled over by a policeman. And the policeman comes up to her and goes, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" She goes, yeah. He goes, "You were doing 70 in a 40. She goes, yeah, I was. Yep. He goes, "All right, well, let me see your license." She goes, "I don't have one." "You don't have one?" "No, I'm legally blind." "Oh my God. So is this your car? Do you have a registration?" And she goes, No, I stole it." What? Who did you steal the car from?" "I don't know his name. I killed him and chopped him up and threw him in the trunk." Well, at this point, the police officer's starting to back away, puts his hand in his gun and calls for backup and keeps his distance until his superiors show up. So superior finally gets there, walks up to the car with his hand on his gun, and first thing he says is, "Ma'am, show me your hands." So she puts her hands on the wheel, and he goes, "Do you have a license?" And she goes, Yeah, here it is. And then he goes, "Pop the trunk." So they pop the trunk. She goes back. The cops go look in the trunk, and there's nothing in there but a spare tire and, the things you'd expect to see in a trunk. Walks back around and goes, "Do you have a registration for this car?" She goes, Yeah. Here's the registration for the car. Hands the police officer the registration. Well, the lieutenant goes, the officer said that you stole the car and you killed the owner of the car and you chopped him up and put him in the trunk. She goes, he probably also told you I was speeding. So my talk for today, give credit to yourself. Look at the process Trish just led us through. And every grateful blessings process I've ever heard. What we do is we give blessings and gratitude for everything else in our lives, maybe even our own good health. But do we ever take the time to give ourselves credit for what we have done with our lives, who we have become in our lives, what we bring? Now, there's this tendency to, when we talk about that kind of stuff, like, "Hey, this is what I did," we've been told, "Hey, you're bragging. Don't brag." And many of us were raised that way. Many of us were raised not to brag. But we were certainly raised to be critical of ourselves, to look at what we don't do well, what we need to work on, what we need to get better at. I mean, how many of you out there spend time, looking at your regrets? Do you spend as much time looking at what you have done that you're happy about? That's the thing, is, are you spending time looking at the things you're proud of? And somebody may say, "Well, I spend my time looking at how to grow myself in my life, how to evolve, how to get better." When I first met my wife, she was all about evolution, and I was all about acceptance. And even in acceptance, I realized that isn't far enough. It's not good enough to just accept yourself. When we're talking about unconditional love and loving ourselves, we got to be willing to take a look at those things we're really good at, whatever they are. We got to take time to write it down, to speak it out loud to somebody. Say, "Hey, these are the things in life I'm good at. And if somebody says, hey, you got too big a head, or hey, stop bragging, tell them no. What we focus on, we give power to. So are you spending your time focusing on the things that you don't do well because you want to get better at it? Now, sure, we do need to, we want to evolve. So we take time to look at those parts of ourselves that we can improve. I think one of the things that's really helped me with all this is learning to play the guitar. Because in playing the guitar, there's a way in which you practice without getting on your case for what you don't know. It's simply practice. And yet, when it comes time to perform, you concentrate on what you do know. So those of us who are play instruments have a way of being with this process of acknowledging actually through performance what it is we do know. And when you're performing, nobody tells you you're bragging. Some people even pay tickets to come see you perform. When my wife did me the beautiful present of getting me tickets to see The Who. Now, because I told her it was one of the few groups I didn't get to see back in the 70s and 80s when I saw hundreds of groups, I never got to see The Who. And I was really afraid that it would be a disappointing concert because these are old guys, right? I didn't, so I wasn't sure this was going to work out, but I was excited and thought, okay, however they do, I'll be forgiving and we'll go see this show. And they blew it out of the water. They were amazing. I was on my feet the whole show, screaming and singing along, and just in absolute heaven as they played all the songs I remembered from when I was a kid and played them beautifully. They weren't bragging. They were showing us what they were good at. And we paid, Ash will tell you, it cost quite a bit of penny to pay to go see them do it. This should be each of us ready to show what we're good at all the time, anytime. The Who didn't go around asking, does anybody want to hear me play? They just said, we're playing. You want to show up, but we're going to show what we're really good at. And lots of people showed up. I hear people say all the time they feel invisible, because they're not being acknowledged enough. But it is clear to me now that happens because we don't acknowledge ourselves enough. That the more we acknowledge ourselves, the more others will acknowledge us. Because it's a natural outgrowth of us. And remember, in our teaching, everything going on out here is only a reflection. That's all. Life is only a reflection of what it is we embody. So if you don't feel like you are getting acknowledged enough by others, I guarantee you it's because you're not spending near enough time acknowledging yourself. Give yourself credit. You won't have too big a head, and it isn't bragging. You get to say fully and freely that which is yours to bring forward. That is the beauty of each of us in our lives. This really came to fruition for me because I turned 65 this week. And my wife did a magnificent job. She has for several years now. I'm not to be honest, just to be clear, I am not an easy guy to please. I am very particular and like things in very specific ways. And somehow my wife has figured all this out. So that when my birthday comes around in particular, she is fantastic at bringing forth and offering me ideas that I just love. So we went up to a cabin in the woods, which I know I've talked to you guys a lot about, is where I spent several years. I love being in the woods. And Buddy got to be off leash the whole time, which was fantastic. He's running around all over the place like a crazy man. The hard part was coming back in the city and putting him back on a leash again. He's like, what do you mean I got to be on a leash again? But anyway, turning 65 really got me thinking about my life, really got me thinking about all the different things I've done and how much time I have spent in regret of some of the things I've done. It made me realize that I look at my journals. I've been journaling, by the way, since I'm 18 years old, and I'm now 65. I have journals covering all those years. So I can look back and see what I was thinking about at any time in my life because it's written down. Because that's what I journal about, whatever it is I'm thinking about. And I've spent an awful lot of time in regret about this, that, and the other thing. Now, sometimes being in regret is really helpful to making amends. But then I can feel good about making the amends. But what I noticed is my mind tends to wander back to the regret even after I've made the amends. Now, maybe yours does too. Maybe you're spending a little more time on what you regret, what you think you should have done different, what you wish you had done and passed on, or what you did and wish you had passed on it. Let go of those things. They are getting in the way of you loving yourself. They are getting in the way of you bringing forth that which you want to focus on. Now, it is true. Again, I want to be clear that we do want to focus on our evolution. But I promise you that this is a huge part of it. Nothing evolves us faster than self-love. We may think that we can evolve faster if we fix those things in us that we think are broken. But true evolution does not stop at acceptance. It moves through it to a true sense of giving yourself credit for the magnificence of who you are. You want to hear it come back to you from other people? How much time are you spending giving it to yourself? Saying, hey, you know what? I'm really good at this. I'm really good at that. I'm really good. I did that really well. When we spend time that way, it also becomes easier to then point it out to others. Like I'm sure you guys have heard me week after week tell you about what my wife did that was great. You know why I'm so good at that is because I'm not afraid to tell myself what I think I did that was great. Don't be afraid to do that for yourself. It'll help you make it easier to say it to others. For those of you who think, oh, I'm always focused, on others and I make sure, I give them gratitude. I promise you, you are not giving others the level of gratitude, any more gratitude than you can give yourself. Because life is a reflection. That's all that's going on. Everything out here is simply a reflection of what you have embodied in here. You can't give more love than you give yourself. So it's important to spend that time loving on yourself. It's like they always say in the airlines with the masks, always put your own one on first before you go help somebody else, or else You can't do much to help others if you go unconscious because you didn't get enough air. You know, that works with this too. Gratitude is not a process just for the blessings of our lives out here. It isn't even just a process for the blessings of our good health or our home. It needs to be for ourselves and our own goodness. And it isn't just for Thanksgiving. It's a habit that you really want to develop. I work on this habit. I've gotten, luckily, because I've journaled for so many years, I've actually gotten to see how I've gotten better at it. But there's something about turning 65 that is a fascinating thing. I got my Medicare card in the mail. I was like, oh my God, I'm that old. Now, I know I'm talking to the choir out here, people looking at me going, you're a youngster. You're a youngster. But there may be some out there who are younger than 65 listening today, tuning in today. And I want to tell you that it's a fascinating thing. But it has allowed me to reflect on myself very differently than I have up to now, and to realize that this is something that everybody should be aware of. We really do need to take credit for what we're good at. Not be afraid of bragging, but to put it out there like any performance artist. You don't think you're a performance artist? You are. That's what life is. My wife is always saying to me that my true art is my life. And I have always felt it that way, that the way I create my life is my true art. What I hadn't so realized is that's actually true for everybody. Each of you, your greatest piece of art is your life. And just like you have created a painting or a song or a book that you would put out to the world, and that's you taking credit for the good work you did, do that with your greatest piece of art, which is your life. Put it out there. Be willing to tell others, this is what I'm good at. This is what I've done well. This is what I'm proud of. Don't be shy about that. It doesn't serve you, particularly if you're somebody who feels unseen by others. Don't wait for them to acknowledge you. Go to them and you acknowledge you. Because that's your art. That's saying, hey, look at this. Look what I just wrote. Right? I write something, and the first thing I do is go to my wife and say, hey, read this. Look what I just did. And luckily, I got a wife who'll go, okay, and read it. And go, yeah, that's good. Maybe you can fix it here and there, but that's good. We need to be doing this for ourselves in the mirror, with your closest buddies, with your loved ones. Take time to tell them what you are good at so that it's expressed, so that it's outverted. Take credit. You deserve it. It's a deeper way of loving yourself. I know you may be shy of it. I know it may not even be easy, but it's worth it. This Thanksgiving, begin the habit of taking credit. It doesn't matter whether you're 10 or 100. You have done something you can take credit for. You have lived in ways that you can take credit for. Look what I did with my life. Look what I'm good at. And in feeding that power, you create the next good thing happening. What we focus on, we give power to. So, what I'm offering you here is a tremendously powerful process of bringing forth more of what it is you want in life, which is to love yourself and to feel good about yourself and feel good about your life. This is how it works. This is how it's done. Let's do it. Let's step up. Let's tell each other, this is what I'm good at, and just put it out there. And then receive the self love you just did for yourself by saying it out loud. I love you. Thank you. That's my talk for today. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What I give, I receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am, and so it is.